things? Are we being transmitted? How is it? Sorry to ask that question.
Yeah, we are transmitting on YouTube. So here there's only the coordinators of the Red Feminista de las Ciencias Sociales and the presenters.
Good.
And we are already live in YouTube. Right?
Yeah, we are already live. So we started. So I would like to start this third session of the conference. So welcome to all of that who are over here from Zoom and the people who are in YouTube. So this is the last session of the conference, as I said before, but not least important. So keeping in mind that. Also, I would like to remind you this is the first international conference. It's called Building Feminist Academy. This is organized by the Red Feminista de las Ciencias Sociales. And this session, we will talking about feminist experience. So we have 4 presentations that are going to talk about that. Also, I would like to highlight that this is important for us as a for us organizer and the member of the feminist network, because our goal is to build a discussion about feminist view, and also it's important for us have a perspective from a global south. So saying that, so far the last 2 sessions, the discussion is going very great. So thank you for all participants. And moving to another point, where I said before, we have 4 presentations. Each one have 15 minutes to present it. So I will let you know when you are soon to finish the presentation. Also, I would like to remind you that we are live in our channel in YouTube. So for people who are over there, so you have either you have to post in English or Spanish. We will try to translate all your questions, suggestions, congrats to your colleagues. So we are here to help you and improve our discussion. So let's begin with the first presentation. The first presenters are Claudia Matus and Valentina Razuriz from Pontificia Universidad Católica. So please, if you want to share your presentation, you can do it. So thank you.
Yes, thank you. Oh, sorry. Let me share also audio. Yes.
All right. So we have just 15 minutes, right, for the presentation?
Yes, please.
All right. Okay, this is the title of our presentation, Binary Gender Norm, Becoming with Ethnographic Data and Art-Based in the Audiovisual Experiences. And this is a work we share with Valentina, in which we, what we did is we took some ethnographic data that we produced between 2017 and 2019, and we revisit that ethnographic data with different questions. Just to give you a glimpse of what we did. The data we produced in schools was about how the production of normalcy happens in school settings. And then what we did with this, a particular project in which we wanted to create videos about the production of the gender norm, was a different purpose. So what we did was to create 2 different questions to go and revisit the information. So this is pretty much what we the way we started, you know, this production of the videos. And I think that's the most important thing before we go into more detail about the specific work. So I think that the important thing is the theoretical perspective we used in order to produce these videos. So this is something that Valentina is going to talk about.
Yeah, maybe I can start with the theory and then we can show them a little bit of that.
Yeah.
So, so we're thinking about this work that we did with an audiovisual team as part of what Braidotti calls an ethics of joy. So an ethics of joy is a process of becoming, being like you are not something fixed, but you are in constant change. So this becoming is not contained in the present conditions and has to be brought about creatively by a qualitative leap of collective praxis and ethical imagination. And we read this process that through this lens. We think that the work that we did with ethnographic data and becoming with that data and with an audiovisual team to produce these videos was a sort of cartography of the present conditions of bondage, as Braidotti says, in regards of to gender norms in schools, but also has the purpose of mobilizing desire in disruptive ways and creating a laboratory of the new. And we experienced this laboratory of the new even before the videos came out, through this process of creating knowledge with an audiovisual team, like a team of researchers and an audiovisual team. So we wanted to show you one of the clips that we created with this team, and then we can continue with the experience.
Y los que nunca la han visto. ¿Por qué eres tan linda tú? Esta soy yo. Esta soy yo a los 5 años. Esta es la muñeca que me regalaron, este es mi color favorito, este es el color de mi pieza, este es el colegio, esta es la fila para entrar a la sala, esos son los niños y estas las niñas. Las niñas entramos primero. Esta es la herida que me hice cuando salté por la pandereta. Esta es mi mamá. Esta soy yo prometiéndole que nunca más. Los niños estaban en los columpios gritando qué superhéroe era cada uno. Me acuerdo de llegar, de subirme a un columpio gritando que yo era la Mujer Maravilla y que la profesora salga, me abrace y me diga que no grite tan fuerte. Qué feo. Calladitas nos vemos más bonitas. Más prolija, más linda, más peinada y más sonriente, más limpia, silenciosa, arregladita, más señorita, más dulce, cuidadosa, más cooperadora, más quieta, más organizada, más estudiosa. El profesor preguntó una que yo me sabía. La dije, no me escucharon. Un compañero la dijo después, ¡buena! Seguí levantando la mano y nunca pude contestar. Se me cansó el brazo. Ahora me dan la palabra. Ahora ya no quiero contestar. ¿Para qué? En la calle, en el mall, los que la conocen y los que nunca la han visto, a una la miran en el colegio, en la plaza, a una la miran fijo, a una la miran entera, hasta que una baja la mirada, como que una empieza a hundirse, encogerse, como que las miradas la hicieran chiquitita, como una partícula en el aire, una que no vuela, una que se queda ahí, como flotando. Estábamos en la clase de educación sexual. La profesora estaba mostrando los preservativos, los niños se reían todo el rato y a una se le contagiaba la risa. La profesora me llamó la atención. Ahí todas dijimos, ¿y por qué no los reta a ellos? Porque ellos son inmaduros. Nosotras somos responsables. Nosotras somos las responsables. ¿Por qué eres tan linda tú? Pero mírame.
Okay. Thank you for clapping. One of the interesting things about this video, and I'm gonna try to be very focused on the information that I think is important about this work. First of all, when we came back to the ethnographic data, we asked 2 different questions to the previous collected data, previous produced data. And it was, the first one was to answer the question, in what ways women are produced as second-class citizens in school? That was the first question. And what you just saw, this video is the product of that, answering the question, that question. The second one was what's how the hegemonic masculinity, the traditional masculinity is created in schools. So the second video is about boys being, you know, forced to enact this masculinity. And the third one is like a resume of both. Okay, so the important thing about this first one and is that the purpose to produce this video was a very humble one. It was to have more material with which we can go to schools to do our work. Okay, so that was pretty much the purpose of producing these videos. But something happened in the process that it became very, I don't know how to say that, very effective. And I don't know if that would be the reason. And plus that is very beautifully done. But it has received a lot of awards, something that we didn't expect, by the way. So what I'm trying to say here is that the impulse that we contain in a way with the data in order to make it more available for any audience became something very interesting in terms of the impact this video has had in different, you know, venues. And this is something we didn't expect. And one of the things that we are very proud of, in a way, is that that initial idea that we, in order to teach, between quotes, in order to teach or to talk about how the gender norm gets reproduced and what is our way of producing it at the same time that we are criticizing it, it became something very unpredictable for us. So for the team, because one of the things that we did while we were creating this video was that when we decided to work with this very interesting group that produced the visuals, in order to get to the point to decide what was the plot to start producing the images, we decided that we had to, in some ways, to put this data that we had organized in a different way as it was presented in the ethnographic project, and to discuss it with, for instance, with in-service teachers at that point. So at the very beginning, we had these meetings with in-service teachers, with students who were still in their professional training. We as researchers, so we had these conversations about what was the idea that they could get out of this way of organizing the information that we were producing. So that was the way for us to create, and it was very spontaneous. We didn't have an idea beforehand, so it was very like, okay, let's do this, and what if we do this, and you know, that kind of process. So in that sense, was very intuitive and very creative. And I don't know, Vale, if you want to add something else about the process itself.
Yeah, I wanted to add like about the experience of working with the audiovisual team. We also had we met a lot of times with them. They laugh now and say that they never met with any other clients as much as they have met with us, because we wanted to be able to really be able to communicate complex theories, complex examples also, in a way that we're going to be understood by the team and also translated into sounds, colors, tones of voice, we wanted to affect viewers in particular ways. So we had to meet a lot with the audiovisual team, with Pájaro. And well, we had a lot of fun. It was a very emotional process, not only for us, but for them too, because they started to also be affected by the things that we were sharing. And also they started to share personal experiences that enriched the production of the videos and the affective capacity of the videos. I remember one of the last meetings where we're discussing the issue of like how gender assembles in the world, and we were trying to explain this to Christian, one of the audiovisual members of the team, of the audiovisual team, and we were like struggling to show how it's embedded in everything that we do, and we were like playing with the idea of sound, for example. And that made, for example, all the videos have particular sounds and representations of sound. Also, like the lines at the beginning and at the end, that play with the idea that genders might be like a sound that we cannot hear, like those sounds that only dogs hear, and it's all around us, and it's mutating always to continue producing hierarchies and binaries. So that in terms of the working with this research team and working to produce new knowledge, because we had the ethnographic data, and Claudia had published a book about that. This was a new way of using the produced data to do something else.
Yeah.
And in terms of what we wanted to the videos to cause, we didn't have like a specific idea of what the videos would cost, and that's what Claudia was sharing recently. The things that have happened when we play the videos with the audience have been unexpected in different ways. From people that share like personal experiences related to gender violence or abuse. So we have reflected with Claudia that these videos sometimes open things up that we are still processing what is going to happen and how we can support the processes that come after that. So this is something that Claudia wants to research in the future and continue this work in this way. But it has had an impact, a very strong impact on audiences. I don't know, Claudia, if you want to add anything.
Yeah, this is something that, and thank you for bringing that issue, Valentina, because it's very important this is something we realized that whenever we, in the small groups, we have worked with these videos, is something that you cannot just have in one-time meeting. It's something that you have to have some kind of follow-up. So this is something that we have to plan in order to fulfill the main purpose of making these videos at the beginning. Okay, this is one question. One thing that I wanted to mention. The other thing is that for those who are interested in doing this kind of work with produced data, it's important to understand that this is a very hard work. It almost has as hard as writing a paper in terms of academic work. We took like 5 to 6 months in weekly meetings with this group. So this is just to produce the plot. You know what I mean? So it was a very demanding process. So it's not like because it was also interesting to deal with the funding agency, because this was not a cheap work. Okay, it was expensive. So, for instance, when I had to make an argument for the amount of money we were spending on doing this short video, it was very hard to explain and for them to understand that this was not a collection of recordings and then put it in one piece. So I had to tell them, this is like to create a movie. That was what we were doing. So, you know, I think this is a very new way of making an argument about when we take seriously the idea that we are going to be, we want to make data democratic. It means to reach different audiences. So you have to start dealing with, you know, institutions, funding institutions and stuff. And the other thing that I think is important, I know that we are almost ready for the presentation, but we have presented this in very different countries, and just to understand how it is perceived by other audiences, not Chilean audiences. And it's very interesting because most of them engage with what we see in the videos. But one of the interesting counter-arguments of someone, I remember a colleague in Australia, she told me, yeah, but it looks like it's very simple. Like you show the video and kind of you understand, you relate to the video effectively, and you get touched by what is seen there. But I don't think it is that easy. And it was a very important comment, because this is one, and the other one is that you cannot see, for instance, all the LGBT and others communities, okay, in this video. So this is a very interesting point, because one of the things that we are trying to show here in a very simplistic way, we understand that, but a very provocative way, is that the gender norm is so powerful that the ways it works, the way it operates, make us talk about, for instance, when we talk about LGBT communities, they still talk about as dissident people, because they're responding to this, you know, normative way of understanding what it means to be a woman, what it means to be a man. So we take all these comments very seriously, and we are working on our next series of videos. But we just wanted to finish saying that it was a very cool experience. We learned a lot about, you know, rereading our data, trying to explain to a very different group of people, like, you know, those guys from the publishing, you know, group. So it's a very, you know, interesting for us. So this is why we're still working with them and producing a new set of videos. So I think this is what we have to share with you. Thank you so much for listening.
Yeah, we had those kinds of questions just to wrap up the presentation, but thank you so much for the opportunity to present this. And we are starting to think about this process and what it meant and what it could mean in terms of knowledge production within an academic environment, and also in relation to the democratization of knowledge. So thank you so much.
Both of us. Very interesting presentations, and congratulations for your hours for the video. So you feel very proud of this work. So thank you for that. And right now it's the turn of Pia Rodriguez from Universidad O'Higgins, and I will share her presentation. Can you see the presentation? Yes, Pia.
Yes.
I'll let you to.
Denise, I think you need to press the button. Yes.
Yeah.
Bueno, muchas gracias. Hi everyone, soy Pia Rodríguez, él es INTI, y esta presentación es sobre una investigación que realizo actualmente, titulada Mujeres en situación de discapacidad y sus procesos de maternidad, experiencias en entornos rurales de Chile. La siguiente, por favor. Para comentarles un poquito de las líneas de investigación que he venido trabajando y en los cuales se encuadra esta investigación. Se encuentran los derechos sexuales y reproductivos, los estudios de género y salud, los estudios críticos de la discapacidad, los estudios de maternaje y maternidad y las epistemologías feministas situadas. De esta línea de investigación he considerado algunos elementos epistémicos y también metodológicos para poder construir lo que les voy a presentar a continuación. La siguiente. Entonces, como les comentaba, esta es una investigación postdoctoral que inicié en el año 2022 en el marco de la Universidad de O'Higgins. Posteriormente me adjudiqué el Fontecit de postdoctorado este año, por lo tanto se continúa realizando esta investigación en el marco de ese concurso. En términos de problematización y por qué es relevante o porque yo considero relevante abordar este tema, es porque los colectivos reivindicativos de las mujeres en general, en términos de movimientos sociales de feminismos, por ejemplo, en plural hablo, no visibilizan a las mujeres en situación de discapacidad. A su vez, existe una subvaloración de la maternidad en las dinámicas sociales o en la estructura social. Eso se suma al cuestionamiento constante que tienen que someterse las mujeres en situación de discapacidad respecto a su ejercicio de maternidad, es decir, cuando desean ser madres o cuando ya lo son. Y a su vez, desde la perspectiva de la ruralidad, existe una infravaloración con características de urbanidad occidental, colonial, por habitar en ruralidad. Entonces, si consideramos todos estos elementos, tenemos entonces esta investigación que problematiza de alguna manera aspectos como la maternidad, la discapacidad y la ruralidad. Esta investigación se está realizando, está en curso en la zona centro-sur de Chile, aborda aproximadamente 4 regiones del país, iniciándose en la región de O'Higgins, la región del Libertad Bernardo O'Higgins. La siguiente. Para efectos de esta presentación les voy a comentar solamente 2 de los objetivos que estoy abordando, porque evidentemente solo son 15 minutos. El primer objetivo es el analizar los significados que las mujeres en situación de discapacidad le otorgan a los procesos de maternidad. Estos procesos se entienden como las etapas de gestación, parto y posparto en el contexto rural. Y otro de los objetivos que se abordaron es indagar en la vulneración de derechos sexuales y reproductivos, específicamente la exposición a actos de violencia ginecobstétrica en sus procesos de maternidad. La siguiente. Respecto al primer objetivo de investigación que tiene que ver con los significados que ellas le otorgan, se inició este estudio, como les comentaba, en la región de O'Higgins, en la comuna de Las Cabras, en un sector rural que se llama Las Chiscas. Ahí entrevisté a María, seudónimo, también tomé algunos registros fotográficos. María tiene 37 años, ella nació con baja visión, que progresivamente se fue agudizando hasta tener solamente un 80%, o sea, perder el 80% de su visión hoy en día. Ella tiene 4 hijos, es dueña de casa y a la vez tiene un mini emprendimiento que vende ropa deportiva y habita en un sector rural de la región de O'Higgins. La siguiente. Aquí les comento algunos extractos que tienen que ver con cómo ella identifica sus procesos de maternidad respecto o vinculados a su discapacidad en el marco de la violencia institucional que ella ha estado sometida. En la primera cita dice: tienen que estar contra mí. Yo digo que algún día se van a dar cuenta de cómo fueron las cosas. Y yo estaba 100% preocupada del colegio y todo, con lo poco que yo tenía, porque yo tenía mi pensión, que es la pensión por discapacidad, y nada más, y él tampoco ayudaba. Nunca me dieron una pensión. Y al final salí. La segunda cita. Yo pedí visitas y la abuela al tiro se tiraba contra mí, que yo no podía cuidarlos bien por el tema de mi vista. Entonces fue siempre en ese sentido. Yo creo que eso me afectó harto hasta el día de hoy. Hoy no sé nada de ellos, de sus hijos. Sé que estudian en el liceo. El otro niño, no sé, el más chico, porque no está con la abuela, no está con el papá, y no sabe dónde está. Y la única que siempre ha estado conmigo es mi hija. El contexto de esta entrevista, o más bien el contexto de la participante de María, es que ella tuvo 4 hijos, los cuales le fueron arrebatados. La tuición la tuvo el padre de estos 4 hijos, producto de que ella es ciega. Ella se separó de su pareja, porque él la agredía verbal y físicamente y psicológicamente. Por lo tanto, una vez que fueron a juicio, a ella le quitaron la atención de sus 4 hijos y posteriormente ella no ha podido ver a sus hijos, ya que la familia del padre aparentemente le ha inculcado a los niños que ella los abandonó. Entonces, ella, su principal malestar, su principal pena, tristeza, que lleva hasta el día de hoy, tiene que ver principalmente con la violencia institucional de la cual fue víctima en este juicio y que culminó con que le quitaran a sus 4 hijos y que ella no los pueda ver hasta el día de hoy. La siguiente, por favor. Luego, respondiendo al segundo objetivo de estos objetivos específicos de esta gran investigación, que tiene que ver con indagar en la vulneración de derechos sexuales y reproductivos, se realizó una revisión integradora de la literatura. Tiene como característica hacer una lectura un poquito más crítica de la evidencia científica bueno, a modo como de definición, se va a entender la violencia gineco-obstétrica como todo maltrato o agresión psicológica, física o sexual, omisión o negación injustificada que suceda durante la atención de la gestación, preparto, parto y posparto, aborto, las causales establecidas por la ley, y en el marco de la atención de la salud sexual y reproductiva de la mujer. Esta definición está al interior de un proyecto de ley, que es el proyecto de ley Adriana, que lo que habla un poco es de poder visibilizar, problematizar y erradicar los actos de violencia higiénico-obstétrica. Lo interesante de este proyecto de ley, a diferencia de los otros países que ya la tienen promulgada, es que incorpora no tan solo las etapas obstétricas de las mujeres, que tiene que ver con los procesos de gestación y posparto, sino que también con los procesos, por ejemplo, vinculados a la salud sexual. La siguiente. Aquí hay algunas imágenes donde se pueden ver diversos actos de violencia gineco-obstétrica. La siguiente. Esta revisión integral de la literatura, voy a ir un poquito más rápido, porque se me va a poner a llorar. Eso que pasó. Esta revisión integradora de la literatura se inició con 171 artículos, los cuales se culminó con 9. O sea, la verdad es que existe escasa o insuficiente, por decirlo de alguna manera, evidencia científica que aborde la violencia gineco-obstétrica de mujeres en situación de discapacidad. Para ir finalizando, la siguiente, por favor. Estos fueron los principales hallazgos que abordan los artículos que tienen que ver con la violencia gineco-obstétrica como una violencia de género. Existe una misión epistémica y de la corporeidad, entendiendo el cuerpo individual, social y político de las personas durante sus procesos de maternidad. Es necesario, ¿cierto?, urgentemente una atención digna, consciente y situada a la realidad de mujeres con discapacidad. Que los equipos de salud, tanto los profesionales como todos los que se vinculan con las mujeres, tengan un enfoque de derechos y que exista mayor injerencia de las mujeres con discapacidad en los procesos de desarrollo, de elaboración y discusión de las orientaciones normativas técnicas en la materia vinculadas a los procesos de salud sexual y reproductiva. Así es. Eso, muchas gracias.
Gracias a ti. Thank you, Pia, for your presentation, and let you
Welcome.
stop. Sorry about that. Now is opportunity to present Vichaka Nandi. Sorry about my spelling. From West Bengal State University. So welcome. And if you want to share your screen, you're allowed to do it. Are you here? Yes.
Hello everyone, I'm from India. I'm a senior PhD fellow working at the West Bengal State University, and my work concentrates on the lives of women ex-inmates in their post-release condition. Today I'll be presenting on how they view their corrections, what meaning they make of it, and how that influences or impacts their lives in the post-release condition. So the title of my presentation reads Defied Thresholds, Offender Correction as Viewed and Experienced by Women Ex-Inmates in West Bengal. Well, I'll be presenting orally, and that is not supplemented by any PPT presentation. That is not a problem with you? That is not a problem, right?
Yes.
Yeah, okay. And am I audible? Clearly audible? Should I be speaking louder?
No, but we have some problems with, we can listen you, but we have some problems. It's not that a big issue.
There is a small noise. Maybe
Yeah.
you have, do you have earphones?
Yes, I do have a headphone.
Maybe that could work.
Can I buy a minute from you just to fetch it?
Mm-hmm.
Don't worry, we can wait for you. So.
Vishaka, I think it's fan.
Hello. Yes.
I think this is the fan, ceiling fan.
The ceiling fan. Yes. Might be the case. Thank you. Now, does that help?
Maybe it's working right now. I don't know if you can speak.
How am I sounding right now?
Better.
Better.
Yeah,
great. Thank you so much.
Better?
Yes.
Thank you, Lubna. That was a great help. So yeah, back to my presentation now. Across the world, women constitute a meager prison population, and that duly feeds into either a complete absence or considerable lack of knowledge concerning the challenges they face during and after their confinement in prison. Behind the cultivated indifference, both within and beyond academia, towards their plight remains a tacit claim that women who languish in jails deserve what they get as a rational outcome of their actions. They are justifiably held responsible for the violations meted out to them by the penal institution and what Foucault suggested, the carcerous society. Prison, as a non-arbitrary and arguably the most foolproof institution of modern-day criminal punishment, like other state functionaries, is a gendered space that from its outset excludes women. The invisibilization of women from public spaces, justifiably extended to the world of crime, probably has its worst manifestations in prisons. Today, I'll be talking about the subject of women's correction as viewed and negotiated by them in an Indian situation. It is an attempt to reconstruct the stories of Suhani, Konika, Aparajita, Salma, and many other women who ended up in prison. To understand it from their perspective, keeping in mind their politics of survival, both inside and outside prisons, with correction as a distinct theme. Sex or gender as a singular categorical tool is inadequate to make sense of the women's lived realities construed by complex arrangements of caste, class, age, education, religion, and region in the Indian context. A vast majority of these women did not have a secondary school education. Some of them were school dropouts, married off early in life, and their ontology constructed by the disproportionate demands posed by maintaining a marital home and raising kids. Statistically speaking, many of them represent a class of married Indian women. But to what extent can one draw generalizations based on that single non-homogeneous component? For example, just looking into that single category of married women, one encounters varied engagements, negotiating professional spaces of sex work, call center jobs, business, and paid domestic service, to name a few. The purpose of prison presently glorifies, at least theoretically, the goals of reform and rehabilitation as far as prison recommendations and correctional officials' newsletters enshrine. As a researcher interested to gain a first-hand idea of what institutional correction for women entails in order to achieve the officially stated goals, I was barred from establishing contact with the prison inmates by the authorities on account of security. The security, and the question is, whose security is it being referred to here? The security of the prisoners, the investigator, or the security that the opaque workings of prisons as state-run machinery of punishment require? How conducive is that to the logic of offender correction that constantly hovers over community participation as one of its strategies? Additionally, I was also told that the meaning of correction can very well be derived from the prison administration. This attitude practically attempted not only to undermine, but also suppress the knowledge of the women who are subjected to correction. Therefore, I modified the method of leaning into the perception of my prospective research interlocutors in their post-incarceration phase. Far from being passive recipients, as the state would have preferred them to be, these women acted back on their correctional procedures imposed on them. So I could arrive at two distinct but interrelated themes that emerged through the feminist reading of their experiences. First is how displacement works for them. How displacement is a continuous theme for most Indian women. Marriage still presupposes displacement for a great mass of Indian women. The interlocutors of my research had little scope to feel empowered and exercise their choice, whether in the private or public domain. The community looms large in their perception of the world. On most occasions, they construct their identities more in terms of the place endowed to them by their families and significant others. As a matter of fact, their livelihood and career choices get severely limited by the needs and demands posed by their domestic spaces and roles, and that is what they consider as crucial to being women. The experience of imprisonment jeopardizes this building block of their lives, and her reception of or resistance to the punitive measures is related to preventing this dislocation of her communitarian space. The second theme, the second important point that emerges is that of reform and its distinct location from the ontologies of these women. So reform, instead of being a collaborative project, remains a hegemonic top-down approach divorced from the precarity and consent of its subjects. The fact that how closely reform is linked to its essential successor of rehabilitation determines its integrity and appeal as a penological discourse. Those who have been taken away from society by the justification of making them better human beings and restoring them back to the social milieu feel extremely threatened and cheated, given this void in their enterprise. The humanization of punishment as it is held and celebrated by criminologists and penologists these days remains dehumanized so long it is plagued with a myopic male vision of what holds good for women and is empirically divested of their ontological standpoint. Now, coming to the custodian's view, the custodian women who deploy correction pursue it as one of the many obligations of the liberal state and are quite skeptical of its efficacy over older measures of punishment. On the other hand, the receivers of correction have little interest in its scope, purpose, and methods, but they withhold direct confrontation. They try to use it to their advantage as far as possible and further their own needs inside. The lower instances of resistance in women's prisons might get misunderstood as an absence of direct subversive attempts on their part. Such binaries fail to show the underbelly of totalitarian spaces. Rather than making direct and visible protests, they sustain through acts of ego massaging of the officials to get little things done in their favor. To borrow from James Scott, these women's quiet acts of defiance and indirect resistance make, quote, an utter shambles of the policies dreamed up by their would-be superiors, unquote. The project of forcing women to participate in their own correction faces a similar fate where the custodian's narrative encapsulates the agenda of the subjugated women, which testifies to its untenability. Effectively, correction becomes another philological buzzword. Thank you so much.
Thank you. For the great presentation. Now it's the turn of Luna Jevi from Monash University, Australia, and Jagannath University of Bangladesh. So you can start when you are ready.
Thank you. Can you hear me properly?
Yes. Yeah.
So I will be talking about my fieldwork experience. So I'm a final year PhD student at Monash University, the sociology department. So I did this fieldwork in 2021 and 2022 during COVID. So I'll share the experiences during that time. So it's about minimizing power hierarchy in research practices through language, words, and voice tone. Sorry, I forgot to add that points in the slide. Before starting the presentation, next slide, please. I acknowledge and pay my respect to the traditional custodians and elders past and present of all the lands on which I study. Next slide, please. Okay. So the purpose of this presentation, or what I'm going to share today, is my research experience of working class women's life. Class is missing, I'm sorry about that. Working class women's lives in relation to my insider-outsider position, which is known as linguistic positionality. And then I will be talking about two feminist research practices. One is critical reflexivity and feminist ethics of care and empathy, and how I employed these two in my interviews or in my data collection process. Next slide, please. Okay. I'd like to start with some of the background information of my research, which will set up the context of why and how language and voice tone emerged as significant theme in my research method or in my research practice. So basically, I worked with Bangladeshi women domestic workers who returned from Saudi Arabia with the experience of different forms of gender-based violence. And as I did these interviews over the phone, so I encountered various challenges with reference to feminist research practices, because I wasn't there physically. So some of the major practices of feminist research ideas, I couldn't practice those in the field, like the touching, facial expression, eye contact, and the practice of empathy and care bodily. So I missed those opportunities. So I was totally relied on over the phone. So that's why language and voice tone and words, it was very important for my research, because I had to I totally had to rely on that as I did the interviews over the phone. Next slide, please. So before starting the interviews, I thought it would be really good to do the rapport building over the phone. So I called each of the interviews, each of the participants separately. So when I started talking to them, I realized that they were addressing me as madam, because there is like the women domestic workers, they are basically in the context of Bangladesh, in the historical context of Bangladesh, women domestic workers, they like where they work. So it's normally like people like me, women like me, they're replacing the care burden of me, the middle class women. They're replacing the care burden of middle class women like me. So usually there is a power hierarchy, and that's why they were calling me madam. And another reason that I was working, they knew that I'm a university teacher. So in the context of Bangladesh, university teachers who are female, they're also being called as madam. So it's two madams. It's a huge power differences. They were addressing me as madam, and I realized that power difference, like it's a kind of, how to say it, I'm their master. So it was very it was very uncomfortable feeling for me. So after that first rapport building session, I realized that it's a historical difference. It's not really possible to reduce that with like 1-2 session. It's not possible from their end. So I decided to talk to them over the phone at least for 4 or 5 sessions for rapport building before the interview, because if I couldn't minimize that hierarchy to some extent, it would not be possible to like talk to them comfortably, or they would not feel comfortable talking to me. So that's like what I realized, that like before starting that interview, or before starting even the rapport building, I thought it would be like from my knowledge from the literature, I thought it would be really good to be like we share the same language. So I was a linguistic insider in the context of Bangladesh, but my voice tone, my accent, everything was like, it's different than my participants. So what I did during the rapport building session, I tried to follow their way of talking. I tried to follow the colloquial languages or the dialect. Like they're from different parts of Bangladesh, so they had very different dialects. So I tried to follow their dialects. So that's one thing, and I find that through that process, when I was talking in that way, in their languages, sometimes they were laughing at me because I was trying to copy them, but it was not quite proper, but it reduces that gap. And another thing was, I always observed since my childhood that there's an authoritarian voice tone of the employers authoritarian voice tone with the particularly with the women domestic workers. So I was very careful about my voice tone. Like it shouldn't be like that in any way, or it shouldn't be interpreted to them in that way. So I was very careful about my voice tone, and I was trying to ask them, or I was trying to be very caring through my voice tone. And I think this strategy I really developed as a teacher, because when I first started my career, I always observed that the university teachers, they talk in a very different language. It's a very so-called proper language. It's very correct language, correct words. And my students are coming from very different parts of Bangladesh, and there was no connection between me and my students. And the main difficulty was the language, like main barrier was the language. And then I changed, over the years, I changed my way of talking and I used the colloquial words, and it was really helpful in that case. So I just, like, from that experience, I think I used this strategy for my part, like for my interviews, and I did that deliberately. So it was really helpful, I think, for my research. Next slide, please. Okay, I think I've almost shared what I did, and I developed some of the, from this experience, I developed some of the strategies, I think, which will be, which can be useful for other researchers, similar type of researchers. And the first thing is acknowledging the power difference between the researcher and participants. This is the very first step of minimizing the power hierarchy in this case. And as I already mentioned, that vigilant to language and voice tone during the interviews. I was very attentive to my voice tone and the words I was using and the way I was talking to my participants. I was very much careful about the use of every words and language, so that it doesn't in any way like, you know, it doesn't in any way show that I'm like that, like reproduce that historical power imbalances between me and my participants. And a periodic self-reflection, like listening to the interview recordings with particular attention to language and words. It was really helpful for me, because then I really modified my words choices. As an example, I can say that in the first few interviews, I didn't really notice during the interview time, I was saying bye, because I was in Australia, and like I was used to it, and I didn't even notice that. And then I found that most of my participants, they were saying Allah Hafiz. Like it also means bye. So then I just changed my wording, and from that interviews, like afterwards, I started to say Allah Hafiz. So it really made that connection between me and my participants. And another thing is deliberate practice of care and empathy through voice tone. As I said before, I really did that, like asking about what you eat, have you eaten, like the way I'm, like I have a 5-year-old son, so I try to practice the way I talk to my son, the way I care for my son. I really replicated that for my participants. Like, have you eaten? Have you had your lunch? Have you had your breakfast? What are you doing now? Like, are you feeling well? So the way I'm interacting with a 5-year-old. So I try to do that with my participants, and I found it really, really helpful for my research. And then, while I was doing all this to navigate the power dynamics between me and my participants, I was very careful about the ethical issues, because to some extent in the feminist research, there will be a personal connection with the participants. It's really hard. The boundary is blurred between the researcher and the participants. So I try not to be like not to be too much personal, like in building a relationship with them. So I constantly reminded myself that this is my research work, and that's how I navigated the ethical issues as well. I tried to navigate the ethical issues as well. Next slide, please. So these are the works which helped me to prepare this presentation. Yeah. And that's the end of the presentation. Thank you.
Thank you for all your presentation. Yeah, let's applaud you for that. So right now we have plenty of time for questions, comments, suggestions. So I have a couple of questions. So I would like to start with that in order to keep on with the conversation. But also I would like to kind of summarize what the presentation was and how your presentation are related. First, I think the violence and how different kind of gender violence are present in your presentation. Also, I think the process of doing the research and how or what we meant for us doing the research in this kind of topics are very important. And as I said, navigating in this kind of power dynamic is very important as well, and related with ethical issues that is present in all your presentations. So I would like to say that, to keep it in mind. And also thank you for your topics, are very interesting for us as well. And the third question is for Claudia and Valentina. The question is in Spanish, so I will read in Spanish and then I will translate that. The question say, well, qué increíble video, muchas gracias por ello. En su opinión, ¿cómo es construir este tipo de videos desde la perspectiva feminista? Otra pregunta, ¿qué estrategias pueden compartir que les sirvieron a ustedes como para poder transferir el conocimiento que ustedes tenían con las personas audiovisuales? This is the question in English, in Spanish, or now I translate in English. In your opinion, what was your experience building this kind of video from a feminist perspective? And the other question is, which are the strategies you can share with us that help you to transfer knowledge that you have with the audiovisual persons? So this is one question. If you would like to answer that, please.
Maybe I can go with the first one, ¿vale?
Yeah.
Voy a contestar en español.
Okay.
Right? Because if the person asks the question in Spanish, es obvio. Okay. Yo diría que lo súper corto, tener una mirada feminista para hacer este trabajo es básicamente ser crítica de cómo la norma de género ocurre en el espacio escolar. Nosotros nos enfocamos ahí para este video. ¿Qué quiero decir con esto? Nosotras tratamos de ir a lo sutil, ¿ya? Es como algo de lo que estoy trabajando ahora más teóricamente. Quiere decir que la norma de género es como un monstruo, ¿ya? Así es como un monstruo que se mueve sin que nadie se dé cuenta, es como que se metiera entre todos los intersticios y aparece solo cuando hay algo violento, cuando hay algo que nos impacta. Entonces lo que nosotros queríamos mostrar en este video era justamente eso. Cómo nosotras podemos mirar una escena en donde podamos ordenar todos estos lugares en donde la norma de género como un concepto muy activo hace que las cosas sigan pasando como siempre pasan, como ponerlo de esa manera. Entonces eso para mí es una forma de, si queremos poner cómo sería una visión feminista para hacer estos trabajos. Tiene que ver con eso, con visibilizar, levantar esas formas en que la norma de género opera. Entonces yo diría que esa es mi respuesta a la primera. Vale, ¿quieres contestar en la segunda?
Sí, también voy a responder en español porque fue en español la pregunta. Sobre estrategias para trabajar con el equipo audiovisual. Bueno, nosotros creo que intuitivamente hicimos cosas que tienen que ver con perspectivas feministas de trabajo de investigación. Es decir, nos enfrentamos a este trabajo como un equipo, como un colectivo, con las personas que formaban parte del equipo audiovisual, y respetábamos mucho también su expertise, o sea, es decir, las cosas que ellos sabían mucho, y también finalmente pudimos generar un ambiente en donde todos íbamos compartiendo. Porque, bueno, ustedes que trabajan en género y temas relacionados con el feminismo, uno se da cuenta que hay muchas cosas que están relacionadas con lo más íntimo de las vidas de las personas y por lo tanto emergen muchas historias, muchas reflexiones en torno a este tipo de cosas y nosotros, como decía la Claudia, nos tomábamos el tiempo para incluir todo eso dentro de las reuniones. Las reuniones no dijimos cuánto duraban, pero a veces duraban hasta 3 horas en que conversábamos, tratando de explicar algún concepto, escuchando también las ideas que tenían ellos, por ejemplo, para representar el sonido, cosas que a nosotros no se nos ocurrían y que en el fondo se da una dinámica muy enriquecedora de poder ir incorporando los saberes que traía cada miembro del equipo en ese momento. Y quedamos súper contentos con ellos también quedaron súper contentos con nosotras, y de hecho la Claudia va a seguir trabajando con ellos y hemos hasta pensado no sé, en hacer así, escribir hasta un paper académico en relación a esta experiencia con ellos, incorporando también lo que fue la experiencia para ellos de trabajar con académicas y también con teorías que son a veces bastante obtusas y difíciles de entender. Entonces eso diría yo que fue como lo que intuitivamente hicimos y que todavía estamos masticando y procesando cómo fue esa experiencia.
Thank you for your answer. Now I have a question for Pia. Pia, I don't know if you are available. If not, don't worry. Yeah,
I'm here.
So the question is in Spanish, so as before, I say in Spanish and then I translate in English. The question is, ¿cómo desde la academia podemos ayudar a las mujeres que se encuentran en esta situación? ¿Cómo crees que la academia debería hacerse cargo de esto? Dice entre paréntesis, la pregunta es por si conoces algunos ejemplos que ayuden a visibilizar esas realidades que tú has mostrado. Now in English. The question is how from the academy we can help to women to who are in this kind of situation, how you believe that academia should share this kind of situation as well.
Yo creo que es complejo como caer en esa lógica porque terminamos como replicando un vínculo como muy dependiente, asistencialista, infantilizador también, que es lo que siempre pasa con las mujeres en situación de discapacidad y otras mujeres que pertenecen a otros grupos vulnerados, que terminamos como o desde la academia o desde otros espacios que creemos tener ciertos conocimientos o el conocimiento hegemónico, visibilizamos ese otro saber. Entonces yo creo que más que como enseñar o ir como en esas lógicas, me parece que es importante si tenemos nosotras este espacio como, entre comillas, privilegiado de poder producir o desarrollar, co-desarrollar conocimiento, incorporar a las mujeres que están en esos espacios como más periféricos. Y eso implica generar distintas instancias de trabajo colaborativo con ellas. Eso creo que es lo principal por lo pronto. Y luego lo conversaba hace un tiempo con otra colega que este tipo de situaciones es importante irlas visibilizando, todavía es muy incipiente, pero me imagino que a la medida que vayan generando más investigadoras que se vayan preocupando de estos temas, se va a ir, entre comillas, masificando. Lo importante es siempre tener ojo con no apropiarnos de otros discursos que no son nuestros, con dar voz, porque nosotras no somos altavoz ni nada de eso. Entonces ahí yo creo que hay que ir exclusivamente, si queremos trabajar desde una epistemología feminista, tenemos que tener esos cuidados de no creer que tenemos el conocimiento o que el discurso es nuestro, como ser respetuosa con eso y los espacios también que ocupamos. Eso.
Toda la razón. Now I have a question for Vichaka. Thank you for your presentation. And the question is, I would like to know if you can refer to the fieldwork experience. How was it? especially in terms of emotionality, as the topic is sensitive?
I can't hear you properly. Can you please repeat the question?
Yeah, sure. The question is, I would like to know if you can refer to the fieldwork experience. How was it? Especially in terms of emotionality, as the topic is sensitive.
Well, thank you so much for the question. Yes, I would like to refer to my fieldwork experience. First of all, the first challenge was to locate them, to track them in their post-release phase, because they wanted to cloak themselves into anonymity in the fear of public shame, to avoid the blame of the situation, and maintain a means of subsistence. So that was the first thing, to locate them. And the second thing that followed this first challenge was to prove my ethical position to them. That is, I could actually see it in their gaze, in the manner they spoke to me, that what business do I have in this? Why would they risk their vulnerabilities to me? And what do they have to gain out of all of it? I mean, why would they risk so much? And for what? That was the primary thing. And that was the stepping stone to my research, beyond the logistical challenges, of course. So I tried to unpack and rearrange, if not completely undo, the power differences that was inherently there, that came from my superior position as a woman who had all the privileges at her disposal, such as higher education, probably a stable financial condition, exposure, the things that you can think of. And all of them, in all these pursuits, they were deprived of all of them. And on top of all of that, they had a blemished character, as we call it, because the idea of female criminality entails double deviance. Now, what is double deviance? The concept of double deviance flows from the idea that women's deviance is not only a departure from what is laid down in the formal legal law, I mean, in the formal legal codes. It is also a departure from their womanhood. It is also a fall from their moral rankings. I mean, the way women are perceived in societies, in their most submissive, passive, and sacrificial roles, it is difficult to imagine them in a violent, in a more, what do I say, in a role that that presupposes resistance, that presupposes violence, and I mean, things like that, qualities that you don't essentially attach to a woman. So their conformity is a part of their essence as a woman. So when this label of criminal, a criminal or an offender gets attached to their names, they earn what is known as double deviance. So this stigma, this position, this precarity that becomes a part of their everyday life, actually distances them more from the women who are known to be normal, law-abiding citizens. So that was a great gulf between my position and their position. And I thought that there wasn't any one method suits all approach. Every time I had to experiment, every time I had to renew, every time I had to bear myself to them in order to earn their trust, in order to build the rapport, and actually let them know that it is their view, it is their perspective that can actually enrich ours, and that can make the penal discourse more comprehensive. So yeah, that is what I would like to share.
Thank you very much. And yeah, the last question is for Lubna. The question is, those different roles that you have during the fieldwork, using those roles may have some pros and cons. Did you find any benefit from being seen as a researcher and navigating those other roles?
Can you repeat the question once again?
Yeah, no worry. The question is, those different roles that you had during the fieldwork, using those roles may have some pros and cons. Did you find any benefit from being seen as a researcher and navigating those other roles?
Okay, thank you. If you ask me about the benefit, it's what happened. Like I call this enmeshed identity. It was very depressing time for me. It is very uncomfortable situation, but I consider that very much beneficial because being a middle class woman, middle class privileged woman, being a university teacher, I'm one of the privileged social class in the context of Bangladesh. So I really didn't see the everyday gender realities in my life. Like it was occurring around me, but I couldn't unpack them. So when I started talking to the participants, I learned a lot from them. And like sometimes I learned about the gender issues and what the inequality, what was happening with me, what happened with me, like since my childhood being a woman. So I think they opened my eyes from like being a middle class woman. I couldn't talk about that. Like this is what happened with me. I have never been that bold about I have never been that clear about the inequalities I was facing as a woman. But I think my participants opened my eyes, and that was the benefit I would say. That giving you an answer, I'm not quite sure. Yep.
Yeah, and I have a final question for you. I know you are tired because it's a long day of conference, but I would like to ask you, any of you, if you want to respond this question, is I would like to know about the next step of your research. Do you have any plans? I know that you have, for Claudia and Valentina, you have a new video, but for other researchers, what do you have in mind? I don't know if you want to share your future plans.
Is this an open question?
Yes.
I assume it is so. So I would like to take it if anybody else is not interested or not trying right now. Okay. So the next step to my research, that is filled with a little bit of incertitude. But first of all, since there is a moral responsibility on my part to think and then dive into a matter that is virtually non-existent. I mean, the correction of women is a thing that has a phantom existence, that has a phantom acceptance, if we call it as such. Because first of all, the criminality of women is disregarded, is disowned by our society. Then how can we even think of the correction process that they go through and the plight that they're subjected to? So after going through this research and after having met them, seeing their lives from close quarters, I have understood that it is needful for us to take up a rehabilitative program which our system lacks, for which there is no infrastructure. It is a complete missing thing in both spirit and action. So I have actually tried and collaborated with some of my respondents, with some of my research interlocutors who are comparatively more resourceful, well-connected, who know the nitty-gritty of laws. And we have had a preliminary discussion on this issue, that how can we actually conceptualize and also execute in time the rehabilitation program for these women ex-inmates who probably fall into destitute, and for whom recidivism might actually become an option for survival. So yeah, that is what I have thought of.
Thank you. I don't know if Luna, you want to share with us your future plans, or not worries. It's okay.
So I will submit my thesis in December. So I'm already in academia, and I after this PhD, I really I'm very much influenced by feminist research practices, decolonial research practices, and I think this is a lifestyle. Not only in the research practices, this is an ongoing process in one's life. Being a researcher, it's it doesn't mean that I read some papers and I practice those I just implement those in the field and implement those in my writing. That's not the end. So there is a lot more things to do myself, be a real feminist researcher, and I will try to do that. I'll practice that continuously, and I will definitely practice this in the classroom as well. Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, I don't know if Manuela, you want to share our last comment for the conference?
Okay.
Thank you.
Well, thank you all once again. It's been a long day for those who joined the first session, the second session, and now the third one. So we really appreciate having you all with us. So thank you to the audience, and thank you for your presentations. They were all really interesting, and we really want to continue discussing, sharing our future work. So yeah, as we said at the beginning, the main goal of organizing this conference was to start constituting an international network to discuss these issues, to share our research experiences, to critically and systematically explore how to build a feminist academia, which we know is not easy, but we think it's important to put attention, to pay attention to these micro practices that we are trying to build in our research spaces. So it's important to know what each other are doing, and to try to learn from each other. So yeah, we think that it would be great to continue establishing collaborations. This is an invitation for those of you who have presented today, but also for those of you who are watching us on YouTube, or those of you who will watch us in the future on YouTube. So yeah, please get in touch with the Red Feminista de las Ciencias Sociales, the feminist network of the social sciences. We are based in Chile, but we are reachable in different platforms. You can send us an email, if you have an idea of possible activities that we can organize together, please get in touch. We are in Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, YouTube, so there's lots of ways to get in touch, and we would be really happy to continue enriching this international network. And that's it. Thank you all again, particularly those who are here presenting today their work with us. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you. Bye.